MisGiving Day. They can really turn things around till you don't understand, what the original meaning is. I mean, because, you think of Thanksgiving, you think of, oh, some pilgrims came and they sat down with the Native Americans and they had a feast and it was just great. And then you fast forward to eating turkey dinner at your house and then watching the football game. That's how it started for me. How many millions displaced, hunted, cheated, lied to, dispossessed, raped, harassed, assimilated, enslaved, murdered? When you think of all the things surrounding it, it's just really, really bad. So, going to get into it. I found this. I want you to relearn your culture. Yeah. They just now started taking off names like the Braves and all the Native American names uh, that they put on football teams. All the Native American what's the word, slangs for. So it's a lot that we really have to relearn regarding this. And okay,
like the Redskins and now they're the
thank you.
Commandos.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. The
Redskins.
Redskins, the Braves, the Tomahawks, all of those names. And you know, I heard today that there was an explosion that happened at the Canadian border. It's probably related to this weekend. They haven't killed them all yet. So getting back to Israel though, they their biggest allies are the United States, Canada, and Australia. And what do all those places have in common? Taking the land from the native people and committing genocide on them. I like this picture. You never see these guys. If you go into a store or any place, you never see anybody like this anymore. Or ever. I don't know if you've ever seen anybody like that, unless it was on some Western.
No, you don't see that.
You know what? And they killed all those buffalo too.
Well, they have something here in Virginia where they do the dances and put on the feathers. I've never been, but I've seen it, advertised on the news. Because here in Virginia, a lot of things are named by the Indians. Like Pocosin. They got a highway called a friend of mine called it Poe White, but I heard it was Powell Height. So they have a lot of Indian names around here in Virginia. So they do, and then they have casinos, a part of casino here in Virginia also. So yeah, I've seen them do their dance and things like that here.
Um, they have sometimes they have gatherings like that at UC Davis. They'll have something like that, or but it's very seldom. So
Baba, we had a ceremony at Alcatraz where the Indians were there and they did some tribal things and gave some history, and it was really nice. Several, we'll say, people went. We caught the ferry. The ferry took us there, and we got the view, go through the prison, and we had to walk up this big hill, but it was beautiful. And They were in their tribal dress and gave history. So that was
They
real
have
nice.
the sunrise ceremonies yearly at Alcatraz. And
Mhm.
they were having them in San Jose. Balandemo and I would attend. Last year I was traveling, so I didn't attend. But unfortunately, this year they don't have the sunrise ceremony in San Jose. And I was looking for one because we usually attend on Thanksgiving morning. And the one that I saw was at Alcatraz, but they're sold out. So the ferries leave, they start at 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., and all of them are sold out. So
Oh,
they do that yearly.
Yes, and it was that same thing, and it was early in the morning because we had to get up really, really early and, dress really, really warm and in layers so we could, as the day progressed, take off some of those clothes. But it was beautiful.
yeah. Very seldom though. I'm glad you guys have seen that, but it's not. I mean, I guess the point I was trying to make is there's hardly anybody there. There's hardly they've killed so many people. There's hardly any left. It's just anyway. I was able to find my great grandmother's picture. Let me uh, let me share my screen. So so this is my great great grandmother. Her name was Matilda Gilliam. And that's my great grandmother. Her name was Josephine Proctor. And that's her brother. I don't know what his name was.
Say your great grandmother's last name again.
My great grandmother is Josephine Proctor.
Proctor.
Mhm. And my great great grandmother was Matilda Gilliam, referred to. I have a cousin that did a whole family tree, and she's referred to as Ma Gilliam. Um, my great grandmother, she had like, I don't know, 13 kids. My grandfather was the last of 13 kids. So anyway, moving on. All of us have something like that in our family, if you're here in the United States. So here's the book, African People and European Holidays, A Mental Genocide. I love this. I love this graphic that they have. And so, in volume 1, he's talking about Halloween. I forgot what he calls it, but he calls Thanksgiving MisGiving. He calls Christmas the Merry Mess. Anyway, I Shakamusa Boroshango. I bought this in DC, one of my trips. And that's him, Brother I Shakamusa. And here so the very first chapter, historical roots of MisGiving Day, and he's talking about it. And he said, Black people celebrating Thanksgiving Day is like Americans celebrating the bombing of Pearl Harbor, or the so-called Jews celebrating the rise of the Third Reich, or Palestinians celebrating the intrusion of the settler colony of Zionist Israel, or moreover, the millions of Zulu descendants who are being murdered thousands each day. He wrote this in the 80s, celebrating the establishment of the Union of South Africa. So it's just, trying to show it's imperialism, it's colonization, and really we should look at it differently. And when he wrote this book, I don't see where it says that he wrote it. But I purchased it in the late 80s. So yeah, this is the yeah. Go ahead, Minister Amadi. Go ahead.
I'm sure you're going to get to this, but I wanted to throw it out onto the floor,
Maybe not.
for us to maybe contemplate. And
Uh,
that is, so then how are we to look at these holidays, because many of us have fond memories of family gatherings, and, many of us, I know previously, I know I used to always say, Thanksgiving was my favorite holiday because it was my opportunity to just give thanks and reflect on all the blessings that I had received in the previous year. And then, my family would gather together and everyone would be asked, well, what are you thankful for? And it's just such precious memories that, like are personal to me and my family. So I'm not asking you to answer that. I'm just saying, that's just something that maybe we could reflect on at some point during our presentation. How are we to, and maybe you were already going to get to that. How are we to look at this kind of holiday like this?
I'd like to take that. So I was watching Noam Chomsky. You know who that is?
Yes, I know him.
So Noam Chomsky,
Yes.
they were asking about the Jews and the current Jewish population that's in Israel. Are they really, uh, are they really genetically descendant from the Jews, or are they Khazarians who converted to Judaism? And he said, well, there's two. There's the historical, and then there's the cultural. He said because there'll be people in Israel that'll say, I'm, my father was Jewish, my grandfather was Jewish, my great grandfather was Jewish. So there's a cultural, and then there's a historical. So I think what you're talking about, yeah, like tomorrow, we're gonna go to my sister-in-law's house, and family. Doris has a big family, and family members are gonna come as far away as Oregon, and
Right.
and celebrate. Ra is coming in. My son, my oldest son, he's coming in from uh, Tucson, and
He was able to get away, huh?
yeah, yeah. So he's coming in, and Kaba's gonna go there, and they're both bringing their girlfriends, and so that's one thing, and we're not celebrating this picture. So there's two different things. There's a historical part, and then there's a cultural part.
Mhm.
And I think what we're mostly celebrating is a cultural thing, because yeah, that's when families get together. That's did I answer that good enough?
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you did. I like that. I like that. I appreciate that. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
And Baba's on the let's see, was it the View? But they were what something I was watching earlier, and they were saying the same thing,
Oh, really?
that the youth. I was talking to Mama Rose too, and she was saying that her children call it something else, but they were saying that it was on the View, that it's just a day for people to get together, and because families are so far apart and we're in different, areas, it's a day to just come together with family,
Yeah.
but not to say we're celebrating this, first Thanksgiving, where turkeys weren't even around on the first, Thanksgiving or whatever. So it's a more of a cultural thing. It's a time for family.
Yeah.
Ashe, sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's That's really it. You know, yeah, yeah. So, but you know, historical wise, yeah. Here's another one. You know, these are famous paintings. You know, this is what you think, and then here, okay, some guy. You know, he's the priest or the pastor or reverend, and then Native Americans. You know, how did they communicate? They didn't speak English or whatever they were speaking, Dutch or whatever. They didn't speak European. Wonder how they.
And see, that's the distortion right there when you
Uh-huh.
see those kind of pictures. If they just had families gathering and said that, it would be a whole nother thing. But that's not what they're promoting. They're saying again, the great white father, you know. So,
Yeah,
but we know better. We know better.
yeah, yeah. So, and, you know, here's another one. You know, sat down with the peace pipe, and everything was just cool. You know, just that's the way it's presented. But this is something from the General History of Virginia. I saw Makalisi has joined us, and Sugar D, you're in Virginia. It's from the fourth book, page 294. This was written from a period of 1606 to 1625. The mental state of the Pilgrims. 44 of the Pilgrim Fathers died in the first winter in America, and Governor Bradford said the survivors, scarce 50, remained, and of these, only 7 were sound persons. George Thorpe, a highly educated colonist, thought, however, that the despondency was the real issue. He said in 1621, more do die here of disease of the mind than of the body. At their first Thanksgiving celebration in 1621, there were only 6 or 7 sane people left in the whole Pilgrim colony. The rest were mentally deranged. In other words, putting it in more modern everyday language, the bulk of them were just plain crazy. And then, okay, then they talk about this cannibalism. Captain John Smith, 1580 to 1631, wrote, "So great was our famine that a savage we slew and buried. The poor sort took him up again and ate him, and so did divers ones, another boiled and stewed with herbs. One one amongst the rest did kill his wife, powdered her, and eaten part of her." So this is
They
in.
had there was food all around. There were animals and
Yeah,
there was food everywhere, but they were not people who lived with nature.
man, yeah. So you know, when I read this, I was like, wow, you know, that's
I have a quick question. So
sure.
I wonder what made them mentally crazy. Was it the eating of the bodies or what?
You know, okay, just traveling there, you know, just getting there, you know, a long voyage can make you crazy. Um, we, but they had a more comfortable ride than our ancestors did, and I guess the new environment. I want to say, yeah, the new environment.
They thought England was cold.
Yeah, yeah. So they weren't prepared for the environment. Let's just
Okay.
let's just put it like that. They weren't prepared for the environment, and they were nuts anyway for coming. Yeah. All right. Uh, moving on. Good question. I don't know the exact answer to that. Pilgrims as drunks and sodomites. So yeah, we're always given the very pious, uh, things that the pilgrims did, etc. You know, we're always taught that. Whoops. I got some family pictures I'm going to show later. So here it says the pilgrims as drunks and sodomites. Even the early pilgrims of New England, though very pious, were forced to appear so, weren't all that hardworking. Very, they weren't all that hardworking, very desirable characters we've been led to believe. Governor Bradford, writing in 1642 of the severity of the punishments in his colony, said, and yet all this could not suppress the breaking out of sundry notorious sin, especially drunkenness and uncleanliness, not only incontinence between persons unmarried, for which both men and women have been punished sharply, some married persons, but that which is even worse, sodomy. Nonetheless, Mayflower ascendancy is considered the highest, excuse me, ancestry is considered the highest in the United States. So brother Reverend Boris Shango, he's showing how, okay, we've been giving one picture, but their own writings about those days gives a different picture. Lazy pilgrims steal from the Indians. The Indians, to whom hospitality was a creed, welcomed the whites at first, but soon found that they had but one idea: loot. One of the first acts of the Pilgrim Fathers on touching American soil was to steal corn from them. These savages, as they called them, had no rights that a Christian European was bound to respect. Had the Pilgrims touched some European shore and seen the basket of corn, they wouldn't have considered that theft. No, wouldn't they have considered that theft? Later, they were to capture Indians and sell them as slaves in the West Indies. So it gives a total different picture. Lazy pilgrims resort to Indian slave labor. The only labor available was that of the Indian, whose enslavement began at once. The very presence of Indians badly armed who could be forced to do the rough work had a tendency to make some of, let's see, did I include that? Anyway, it just gives like a history of mistreatment of the Native Americans. I mean, we didn't, I'm gonna stop right here. We didn't get this history in school. You know, when we were given, you know, social studies and history and elementary and junior high and high school, you know, it's just a pious, you know, and the native savage, they were the reason why they had to be exterminated, you know.
There you go, being woke.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go, being woke. And they put it on TV during the time we were smaller. The Indians were
right.
always bad.
That's
and,
right.
And the Cowboys were always good, and the Indians would scalp you, and they made all of that, you know, they put all that in our subconscious mind, honey.
Yeah. So, you know, and when you're a little kid, little boys, we played cowboys and Indians, and
yeah, nobody wanted to be the Indian.
Nobody wanted to be the, yeah. So a lot of isfet, enough isfet to go around, you know. Any other comments? It's interesting whole session. What we've been told. We've been lied to in so many different ways. And like Sugar D, I like the way you put that, Sugar D. Just things that remain in our subconscious.
I remember when my daughter found out that Cleopatra was black. She was devastated. She said,
She was
So
shot.
she's
Yeah.
not, yeah, she really was. But I didn't know she thought that she was really white. But she said, man, I just found out that Cleopatra was black. And she said, I'm hurt. She said, because I thought she was Elizabeth Taylor. I said, no.
That was a big production. I remember that movie, Elizabeth Taylor, and Elizabeth Taylor was considered a beautiful woman. She married 7 times. Um, you know, that was a really big production, but all the movies were like that. There was a movie called Land of the Pharaohs. What's the woman that used to be in Dynasty? Um, the femme fatale in Dynasty. Joan Collins. Joan Collins, a young Joan Collins, is in Land of the Pharaohs, and and then the ultimate classic, the Ten Commandments. And the Ten Commandments, they might still do this. They always
Charleston
still,
Heston, isn't it?
yeah,
Charleston
Charleston
Heston. Yeah.
Heston, Hugh Brenner,
Hugh Brenner.
all the big stars are in this movie, and they show this movie every year on Easter Sunday. It would come on every year Easter Sunday, so you'd have all of that in your mind. Yeah.
And
Any
the one scene of that movie that really was something for me was the parting of the Red Seas. Now, when the water parted, I mean, and the photography or whatever you call it on that was just phenomenal, because when the sea parted and they came through, and then everybody else, that's the one part of that whole movie that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, great.
That was phenomenal.
Yeah, that was state of the art. I bet if you looked it up, that was millions of dollars to make that movie. That was yeah. It was let's continue. All right, here. Cruel and mistreatment. So Spaniards considered Indians just one step above the beast. How awful to think like that. That people, they're one step above the beast. They called them people without reason, finding them unwilling and useless laborers. They since they were unwilling to labor, they massacred them and fed their flesh to dogs. Las Casas account of this one of the most horrifying of all documents in man's inhumanity to man. They even sent Indians to be sold in Europe. Columbus himself took 400. So you don't get this. You don't get this history. Columbus took 400 for sale in 1498. Continuing, the early American whites were as cruel. The Connecticut whites massacred the I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sure I'm gonna.
White.
Yeah, that sounds right, Ed, but I'm sure it's something else. Oh, by the way, Ed, thank you so much for your help this past. Couldn't have been able to do it without you. Yeah, infants were torn from their mother's breasts and hacked to pieces. The heads of the parents were chopped off and kicked about in the streets. Governor Bradford wrote, "It was a fearful sight to see them frying in the fire and streams of blood quenching the same terrible," oh man, and the terrible was the stench and stink thereof. But the victory seemed a sweet sacrifice, and they, the whites, gave praise thereof to God.
And so the irony of all this is that the whites are the ones that were primitive and just,
Yeah.
like one step
Yes.
above the beast, right? And they have the nerve to call the Native Americans primitive. And they were the ones who were the most primitive of all people.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and they called them savages, right?
Right. The nerve of them, huh?
Yes.
And then
The
and then
arrogance of it.
and then less than a century and a half after Columbus, the Indians were virtually extinct in such older colonies as Santo Domingo, Cuba, Jamaica. Sacco thinks that had their exclusive use continued, they all would have perished everywhere. And Minister Makalisi, he said that facetiously, but this is why they don't want the history to be taught. They do not want people to know. And probably because they plan to continue to do this. You know, that's upon finding that the Indian could not stand under the overwhelmingly strenuous labor force upon him, the early trespassing settlers in America turned to the African. Bishop Bartholomew de Las Casas, a name more vile to the African than that of Hitler to the so-called Jews, recommended to the King of Spain and the Pope of Roman Catholic Church that Africans be kidnapped from their homeland and sent as slaves to work in place of the perishing red man. Had the beast not resorted to this tactic, there probably would not have been any Indian survivors in the whole Western Hemisphere. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna stop. It's depressing, huh? You guys, you guys probably say, "God, Emo, come on, man, lighten up." Let's.
But it is enlightening, though, for us to get this history so
Yeah.
that when we're presented with these false images and false narratives, we can at least, look at it through the lens of informed, information, having the real understanding the real story.
Yeah, yeah, it's bad. Let me.
These are the things that need to be talked about and put out there because we don't know our history. Now, yeah, maybe we're conscious, but everybody's not conscious. And if once we know it, also we can pass that on as well.
This is
What's the name of that book again?
it's called African People, European Holidays, a Mental Genocide by Reverend Ishakamusa Borashango. Let me bring it back up. Here's the book right here, Minister Makalisi. See, and there's a book too that deals with the 4th of July, and which is, I mean, when you look at the history of that, it's just, wow, why are we celebrating that? So you see it, Makalisi?
Yes, I see it. I'm writing it down.
Okay, I'll leave it up.
Okay, I got it.
Got it? Okay, all right. Yeah, so should I go back? This is where we left off. Okay, so I mean, somebody drew this. They didn't have photographs. Somebody. So here's the ships coming in, and here they're hunting the Native Americans, beating them to death, clubbing them, and here they're setting them on fire, roasting them.
Celebration.
Yeah, about to throw on the.
Yeah.
This isn't, Minister Imhotep didn't make these pictures up. Here it is. The Spaniards took babies from their mother's breasts, grabbing them by the feet and dashing their heads against. So first he's dashing the baby's head against this rock. Yeah. So anyway, that's it's a drawing of that. And here they are showing them, okay, they had guns. So, you come upon a community, they're all peaceful, everybody's getting along, they have an ordered society. The League of, I think it's called the Confederate. I'm trying to remember, maybe one of you knows can remember the name of this, but is it called the Iroquois Confederacy? It's partly how this country was formed, where they had different representatives come together to pass laws for the society, so they were working in harmony, but they didn't have firearms, they didn't have guns, so they were easy pickings. Here again, look, he's getting ready to cut this guy's scalp. They made pictures of it. This is another painting. This looks like the Union Jack. So these are British soldiers. Look. In spite of this gruesome reality, every year on Thanksgiving Day, Americans in a strange and gluttonous ritual overstuff themselves with turkey and other delicacies, and then to proceed to recline in a hypnotic trance to watch the football game. Some scholars believe that this custom, watching the football game on Thanksgiving Day, is in essence an eerie, subconscious recollection of the grotesque sport engaged in by the Pilgrim Fathers as they tore suckling babes from the breasts of their mothers, hacked them to pieces, chopped off their heads of the parents, and kicked them about in the streets. Even Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of American government, a framer, signer of the Constitution, and himself. See, did I include it? I didn't. I'm sorry. So, moving on, the Europe emptied its jails and sent them to the New World. If the English colonies were to be peopled, how could it be? Stockholders in the Virginia venture found the answer. Use it as a place of punishment. Ship the convicts and others of England's unwanted there. Why hang a strong man for stealing a shilling or breaking into a ship when you could use his labor? In 1611, the very same year the King James Version of the Bible was punished, Governor Dale urged James of England to banish all condemned persons to Virginia. Before that, they were shipped to India. But the voyage around the Cape of Southern Africa was too long and costly, and America was so much nearer. Those from Oxford Gaol were sent, and young people with previous criminal records, the committee of, so they sent their criminals to populate the New World. Wow. They continued to empty England continued to empty her jails into America until 1783. Wow.
And that's why we have a lot of crazy mental,
that,
how they think now.
Yes.
That's just the reason.
Yes. And then.
You have the name Giuliani?
Right.
Yes.
Giuliani. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. America never really ceased to be bandits and criminals, as evidenced through her aiding and abetting of the rape of Africa and the approval by constitutional law of the long continued enslavement of Black people in this country, for which, even after the so-called Emancipation Proclamation, we have never received just reparations. What could be more criminal than the Euro-American having kidnapped us from our homeland, brought us here to their new world, and forcibly made us build a nation for them after 4 centuries of amassing unto themselves a fortune off of the blood, sweat, and tears, scarred backs, psychological and spiritual trauma of our ancestors. Well, whores and harlots were mothers of the American Revolution. But then, yeah, Boris Shago he just doesn't let up. So he puts it. It cannot be denied either that the deportation to America was England's favorite way of getting rid of her loose women. The first ones sent were undoubtedly this kind. You know, 50 lewd women out of the House of Correction and 30 who walked the streets at night. You know, they're just kind of casually documenting the people. Chambers mentioned another shipment of Scotch prostitutes in 1695. How many millions displaced, hunted, cheated, lied to, dispossessed, raped, harassed, assimilated, enslaved, murdered? Education, repatriation, reconciliation, solidarity. Learn the truth of indigenous struggle and make it your truth, your struggle. So, you know, there's something called the Trail of Tears. And these people were marched. It was like over 850 people marched, rounded up, marched at gunpoint from their Indian homeland, walked 600 miles, which took 2 months. More than 40 died, mostly children, of typhoid fever and stress of forced removal. So they went from Indiana to Kansas. Yeah. That was September 1838. You know, so they talk about genocide. And could somebody else read this? Just let me know that you're awake. Someone else, please read this if you can see it.
The UN General Assembly adopted this term and defined it in 1946 as a denial of the right of existence of entire human groups. Most people tend to associate genocide with wholesale slaughter of a specific people. However, the 1994 UN Convention on the Punishment and Prevention of the Crime of Genocide describes genocide beyond outright murder of people as the destruction and extermination of culture. Article 2 of the convention lists 5 categories of activity as genocidal when directed against a specific national, ethnic, racial, or religious group.
Yeah. So it's genocide. So look at the death toll. 95 million to 114 million. The natives of the United States and Canada were exterminated. Why we are not taught that? You know, and they went from looking like this to like this. You know, the ones that remained. Forced assimilation. You know, they didn't, that's not their native dress. Forced assimilation in their schools. I wonder what they're teaching them. I'm sure they're not teaching them how their ancestors were killed, how their parents were killed. Native Americans have the highest mortality rate of any U.S. minority because of U.S. action and policies. The biggest killers, though, were smallpox, measles, influenza, whooping cough, diphtheria, typhus, bubonic plague, cholera, and scarlet fever, all imported by European colonists. We stop there.
And now alcohol.
That's another, yeah, they have a really high alcohol problem. That's so have I uplifted you enough? Should I?
They also have a high rate of suicide.
Yes.
You have enlightened us. I won't say you have uplifted, unless everybody knew everything you said, because some of that stuff I didn't know personally. So, but if everybody else did, then I guess you did. You didn't enlighten them.
Go ahead, Minister. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to just add one other point here. So oftentimes when we talk about Native America, many people don't realize we're also talking about Black people, because Africans came across the Atlantic Ocean and settled in the New World, and so you know, we have the Olmec heads and everything. These are African features, and so that was another effort was made actually to lighten up the skins of many of these Native Americans, because many of them were just black as you are, you and I, you know, as I am and we are, because they were Africans too. So we got to remember that too, that sometimes that when we're talking about Native Americans, we're also talking about ourselves as well. Not in totality, but there was a segment that were African.
Well, that's absolutely true. And there's this book that I wanted to share. There's this book, and it got redone. It got upgraded by Howard Zinn. It's called The Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage.
Right, and I remember, and Ivan Van Sertima, remember before Columbus. So they came before Columbus. He speaks of that as well.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing that you know, we could get into. God, I hate this. Okay, let me go back here. I was searching on that, Amadi. Not that. You know, kind of preparing for that, because I knew that would come up. Well, here's a story that was in NBC. Black Native American descendants fighting for the right to belong. You know, there are so many stories related to this. Let's see, what did I saved something here.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring.
Yeah, you know what? They came before Columbus.
I know that's a whole different subject.
Yeah, it is. It is, but it's an important thing to note. So this book here, Black Indian Heritage. And I keep seeing something that Denzel Washington is going to. So this is the updated version of that book. I keep seeing where Denzel Washington or somebody like that is going to play. What's the brother that's that's the original Lone Ranger. I'm trying to think what his name is. The original the original Lone Ranger is black, and I'm trying to think of his name. You know that, Amadi?
I don't remember his name, but I'm familiar with the guy. Yeah, I've heard the story of him, but
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But I can certainly verify or validate, what you're saying.
Is that Bass Reeves?
Bass Reeves. Thank
Reeves.
you.
Yeah. The movie's on Bass Reeves, and no, he's not. Who's playing Bass Reeves? And it's not.
It's
I
not
just
Denzel. It's not
no. I just saw all they have an episode every once a week, so it's 4 episodes out there. It's good too.
Denzel.
It's really good. But no, Denzel is not the person.
Well, Bass Reeves, according to the history, he hung out with a lot of Native Americans. To get his tracking skills and things like that. I don't know if they show that in the
Yeah,
in the
they do
history.
show him hanging out with Native Americans. Maybe not in that essence, but yeah, yes, he did have a Native American helping him hunt, do the hunting and stuff. Finding people. It's good. It's a good movie. It really is. I mean, a
Yeah,
good series.
yeah, they're I don't know. They distort everything. I shouldn't be surprised. Everything is distorted. So I shouldn't.
Minister Imhotep. Oops.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, this is Judy in Atlanta. I think I mentioned that in our last class that some friends of ours we went to the movies 2 weeks ago to see Killers of the Flower Moon, and that was one of the comments I made when I was talking to some of my friends is that it's basically about the kind of like the Tulsa story of a city in Oklahoma where they killed all these Native Americans. But the Native Americans, it's a 3-hour long movie with Leonardo, what's his
DiCaprio.
name?
DiCaprio.
DiCaprio and what's the other guy's name? I can't think of it. Robert De Niro.
Hmm.
And the movie was 3 hours long, but it was showing all the Native Americans, but not one of them was black. I glimpsed one in a group from a distance that was a dark-skinned Indian, but again, that was the depiction of Native Americans. And if had the people been dark, had the Native Americans been cast as some of the people were dark, you would have realized immediately it was just another just another way of killing black people, what they did to black people. But
Well,
that movie is out now in theaters.
well, thank you for sharing it. What was the title again?
Killer of the Flower Moon.
Killer
It's
of.
based on a true story, supposedly, true story of a whole Indian community they wiped out, just pretty much like the Tulsa story. But of
Sure.
course, the people were not looking, none of them were dark. They were the typical looking, they used actors that looked like the typical, what we think of as Native Americans.
Yeah. When I was in Cancun, and maybe you all noticed this if you travel to Mexico, have you noticed like the darker skinned people in Mexico, they're doing the more menial jobs, and the ones that look more Spanish, they're they're doing the higher salary.
They handle the money.
Yeah, yeah. That was something I noticed being in Cancun. Just being in a hotel. Who's doing the menial? Who's, because they're always trying to sell you different packages, and the ones that were doing that, I mean, they were very nice, but I just noticed they all looked Spanish. You know, they all looked, but the other people were darker skinned, and they were on the bottom. They were on the lower echelons of society. That's something that's still going on today. The people that look more like Mayan or Aztec, those people are on the bottom.
Just to add a little bit off topic, well, off topic, but speaking of movies, Napoleon is out, and some of my friends went to see that last night, and I refused to go see it, but they said it started out talking about how explaining him shooting the noses off the pyramids. I didn't watch it, so I'm not really sure. I may want to see it on TV, but I didn't want to boost up the ticket sales at the box office.
Yeah, I don't want to see that at all. You know, yeah,
That's what I told.
yeah.
I said I'm not paying
You
for
know,
that.
I have really lost my mind if I've gone to the theater and seen that. I'm not telling you all what to do, but for me personally, I just can't do it. Hey, let's get back to these statistics. You know, and some of you it started raising them. So these are I forgot who said it. Was that Amadi or maybe it was Way that talked about alcohol attributable deaths and years of potential life among American Indians. You know, just listen to that word, Indians. It's because Columbus thought he had landed in India is the reason why they're called Indians. They never called themselves the Indians. Anyway, moving on. Uh, Years of potential life loss among American natives and Alaskan natives. So here's average annual number of alcohol attributable deaths among American Indians, Alaskan natives by sex, age group, you know, and just so they don't have a good life expectancy. What else here? So, I mean, you can just go down the statistics. Whoa. Yeah, so they genocide. So we're about finished on this. I want you to relearn your culture. American Holocaust, more than 100 million Native Americans killed. Oh, by the way, does anybody know where the word America comes from? Anybody?
They tell us that it's Amerigo, but I've heard somewhere that it was something else.
Yeah, it was actually it's from. Let me see if I can let me see if I can find it real fast. Oh, here it is. I found it. Hold on. Share. It actually comes from Nicaragua, the Amerique Mountains. The Amerique Mountains are the central spine of Nicaragua and part of Central American Range, which extends through central neck. It goes all the way to Honduras, into Costa Rica. And this is where the name America comes from. We're told that it's Amerigo Vespucci. You know, that's what we're told. but you can look it up. Look this word up. This is how it's spelled: Amerrisque. Amerisque. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Amerrisque. That's where the name America comes. Not Amerigo Vespucci. They just won't tell us anything. They just won't be truthful about anything.
They don't have a very good track record. Put
They
it like
don't.
that.
They really don't. They really don't. And then these are people that fought them, that you hear about, Crazy Horse, Zapata, Geronimo, Chief Pontiac. Wow. You mean the Pontiac car was named after a native? These are the people. Sitting Bull, Chief Joseph, all these guys. There's a picture of freedom fighters, of resistance fighters. And
good enough to get a treaty.
Yeah, here's Homeland Security. Fighting terrorism since 1492. All right. So that's all we have for today. But
I was gonna say that I remember years ago reading what was it called? What is it? Kill an Indian, save a man, kill an Indian, or something like that. But it had to do with like these residential schools that the government had started, and they were just hunting down children to make them assimilate and conform to what they thought was, how they should act. And it was just a heart wrenching to just read all of the things that happened, how they just tore them for their mothers. And first the Indians, Native Americans were fighting against it, but then it was like, well, we're gonna blow you up, we're gonna kill everyone. And then here the mothers are, just handing over their kids because they were just afraid what would happen if they didn't. Of course, some of them fought, but hundreds of thousands of them ended up in the hands of the government in all of these residential schools. And then they were saying that they were going to make better people of them, and they were going to send them to school, but they didn't do that. At first they had a little bit of school, and then they realized that if they could put them to work, then, they could make money. So as these retail stores start popping up, that's not what they were called then, but that was an opportunity for these quote unquote residential schools to start making money. So they were like outsourcing the kids. So they would have maybe 1 hour of lecture school, but then like 7-8 hours of labor. And that's how, the United States started to make money with this thing that's called retail stores right now, and how they just continued and pursued these tribes and made the children conform, to what they wanted them, and then they just used them. So it was a book that was just really tear jerking and just hard to read. But again, like you said, they don't tell us the entire history of it. And those schools were supposedly to make better people out of those children, and that's not what happened at all. and of course, they were raped and molested and mutilated if they didn't do what was required or demanded of them.
Yeah, this is so like I'm not sure how extensive this part is covered at Ileoma Day, but wherever our children are, we need to tell them, maybe not in such graphic terms, depending on the age group, but
Hmm.
we really need to let them know. Because okay, I grew up. I think I was about 30 when I read this book. So yeah.
Well, they have many books that are age appropriate. When I was homeschooling Ballandamu, Howard Zinn had like you know the the teen version or something like that, the young version of some books, and then like the adult version. So they were age appropriate. I'm not quite sure about this book, but yeah, children need to know about it as well.
Yeah, uh, definitely need to know.
And the other thing is, I just want to really boost Baba Imhotep. We are so fortunate to have a Baba Imhotep in our midst that can share all this information with us and these books that are in his library. We are privileged to so much that so many people are not. And I am just grateful and thankful for you for sharing your life and your information with us.
Thank you, my
Grateful,
friend. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate the compliment.
grateful.
Bill, you're still on mute. Oh.
Oh, thank you. Sister Doris.
Yeah, I think um, Mama Angina's comment was right on in regard to the reference, the fact that he held up the books and said these are things that you can read and follow up. It wasn't just put out there, so we can follow up with the study and understand these kind of things. But I guess they didn't have ice back in the 14 and 1500s. Otherwise, it would have been a different story. Uh, but yeah, it does give you cause to pause on the celebration and understand our cultural uh, meanings of these times of spending with family.
Yes. Hmm.
Anybody want to comment or put their thoughts? I
Well,
see it.
yes, I'd like.
Go ahead.
Oh, was there a hand up? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Joseph.
Oh, I just wanted to comment again, just on how important this is. That last comment about um, bringing it to the children, bringing it to our youth, um, because there's even now, I would say more than even maybe 15, 20 years ago, this is lost again. All of this information has been lost again, and that there's so many people who do not understand what they're actually celebrating. Because just as you give, um, what you give your attention to expands, even if you do not have the intent to celebrate what actually happens. As you give life to it and you breathe into it by celebrating, you are still giving life to that spirit that brought about these massacres and the truth behind this. So I just wanted to um, just kind of co-sign on that point, that we do need to continue to bring this to the youth and continue to bring this information to each other. So just again, blessing having Minister Imhotep still share this with us this week.
I see Anthony says he has the books and he's loaded, as they say, ready for bear. He's got all the books there that were referenced, because, sometimes you can't get them, so you got to get them when you see them. I think one of the things that comes to mind also for me was they didn't send their best, they sent the rest. And I think Professor Smalls, if you follow some of his stuff, and he was talking about how the colonialization, how that impacted so much and for so long. But while we have history that goes thousands of years, but those several hundred years certainly did take a toll because they're dealing with people who didn't act and proceed like we would you be used to, with
Right.
balance with nature, so.
Like civilized humans?
Well, and then when they say primitive, primitive should be, which means first, the prime, the basics. It's not, they try to say, oh, they don't know this or that. They don't know all the hatred and the evil, I guess, is really what it comes down to.
Brother Sebastian said in the chat that they always frame others as they actually are.
Yeah.
So others are savages, others are uncivilized. Okay, fine. We see the reality.
Yeah. And Brother Anthony put another book in the chat, God, the Bible, and the Black Man's Destiny. But I think also in this time that we're in, which African women and the original guardian angel. It makes me in this current health, and we're always trying to how to eat better, how to exercise, how to move, what's going on, and considering the measles are back and other things that are going on. So it's like the same tactics, kind of, drop off smallpox, measles, whatever pandemic, whatever the flavor of the month might be.
When
Yes.
when I was in when I lived in Montana, this was back in 1972, 1973, which a lot of Native Americans were in that area on reservations. It was the first time that I had experienced seeing them, and I wish I would have known the history, which I didn't at that time, because I just, when I saw them, I just saw, people who, like I said, the alcoholism, the poverty, but didn't know any of the history behind it, you know. So that was my first experience in seeing the native in large amounts in this land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sebastian had a comment.
Yes, to piggyback on what you mentioned earlier, Mama Doris, as it relates to them sending not necessarily their best. This woman here, see here, white woman, she has a book out, and it's called The Birth of a White Nation. Her name is Jacqueline Badalora, and she goes through that same history of Europe sending over their imprisoned people, and how the white race was actually created. So it lends to some of the stuff that he's sort of mentions in his book here also.
Yeah, definitely.
And if I can comment on that comment and on what Mama Doris had mentioned as far as kind of playing out the same things over and over again, we see all of this at play today as in the last 15, 20 years, rallying again the poor whites, rallying the whites in poverty, that mentality that comes out of the white supremacist areas that coming out of prison in those poor areas, and rallying them and utilizing that same population that they sent over, utilizing that same population to keep division between or to be the battering ram for those in power, to create division there. So still seeing that play out.
Well, they sort of tried to do that when they were bringing in some of the groups of people from South Africa in this presidency. You know, I mean, that was as recent as what, the earlier part of this year. You know, and they're trying, and when she's in the book that I was speaking of, when she's trying to increase the creation of whites, you know, before it was whatever country you'd come from, the Irish, you know, the Italians, and their numbers were getting low. They had to create, you know, widen their umbrella so they can bring their, you know, giving everybody an opportunity to become white now.
Oh, well. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Minister Alicia sends her best. Her and Stiley are celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary today. So she's not on today, but she will be giving the message on Sunday in person here in Sacramento. So 25 years for them. Tomorrow is SOS. And Mama Keisha will continue in regard to talking about our freedom writings. So we look forward to that continuation. I also want to say we're not planning any more Black Knowledge Matters until January, but we might do a replay for this winter solstice on the 17th of December. We'll probably do that. But we've got the lineup for 2026 is looking good. You know, this was a great start. I think everybody's been into it. But we've got Brother Terrence will be presenting on some of his sound healings that he's done in his new book. Sister Liz Taylor, our member who had moved out of Sacramento, she will be doing a class. Minister Alicia will be doing one. Mama Zarita will be doing one. Bob and Dele will be doing one as well. So we've got 5 or 6 good ones lined up come January, February. We know December with WOSE 45th anniversary, the first Sunday in December, December 7th. And the Kwanzaa celebrations, I know here in Sacramento, we'll be doing a Kwanzaa celebration on the 27th, Kujichagulia. And I think this also makes me think of Kujichagulia because define, name, create, and speak for ourselves. And so while we certainly aren't into the Indian thing and, you know, all that kind of stuff, and because if we had been into cannibalism, we wouldn't have been in the same spot. You know, they try to act like we were eating folks, but we weren't the one eating. But I think there's my best friend from junior high school, her mother would say, when the holidays come, she would say, I don't ask any questions. I don't care about it. I just said, thank you, Mr. White Man, for the day off. And so I'm watching some of the comedians that pop up on the scroll, and they're talking about who's bringing the mac and cheese, who's doing the yams. And they were saying how the Thanksgiving dinner among Black folks has gotten so complicated. You know, it's intricacy, you know, because the old guard, they've all retired or gone home to glory. So, you know, your simple Thanksgiving dinner has changed. It's so many more dishes. And the reason why is you got to have a pot of greens with no meat, a pot of greens with turkey meat, a pot of greens with pork. Then you got to have the vegan dish. You got to have the pescatarian dish. So by the time you know, we all take care of everybody, it's a bigger course than it was just, you know, dressing and everything. So, but getting together and giving thanks for family and for the village is culturally what we do. And what we must do is give thanks to the ancestors who sacrificed so that we might have what we have and be who we are and study and have these conversations. So I definitely look at this as a time of getting together and remembering who we are. And hey, we will come together. We're going to pour libation. We're going to have the sweet potato pie and everything else. But because once again, we're not all in the same neighborhoods. We've moved out and we're further away. So coming together becomes special. And we need to remember, define, name, create, and speak for ourselves, but our family, community, nation, and race. And that's what it's about. And that's what we got to, something to do about it is to come together, tell somebody about our Black Knowledge Matters, tell them about our SOS, bring them to church service, share a book with them, you know, be about it, you know. And because we have to transform, you know, our future generations, you know. And the misgiving, it was not to put down anybody, but to be aware, you know. Otherwise we're up there, cowboys and Indians, you know, we're making the turkey. And what was happening at Pilgrim 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But what was happening around the world and what they had stolen and what had happened. And so we don't get it romanticized or rewritten. We have to be about telling the truth and telling the stories and where we fit into the story and how we got hoodwinked into this colonialism, you know, victims of that. So I'm going to close out with prayer unless there's other questions or comments. And, you know, the books that were mentioned that you can have in your library so it doesn't get lost, so that in 5 or 10 years, we'll say, I remember misgiving thing, and share with your kids or grandkids, you know, because it won't just be a memory of what was done in 2021. It'll also be done in 2031, you know, and 41. Okay. So we give thanks to the Most High God. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, we thank you for each person that's here. We thank you for the spirit of truth, justice, and righteousness. We pray that your favor be upon our people, that we will understand that through you all things are possible, that we survive just vicious invasions, but we came out still a Black people that understand and know you and is searching for you even more deeply, and that we will tell our children about you and how you've made a way out of no way. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the ability to communicate and to share and to discuss the truth, discuss teachings, and to remember we are the most beautiful people on the face of this earth. Let us continue to be safe as we go to be with family during these next 10 days, that we will have conversation, we will have dialogue that will uplift our children and future generations, is my prayer. In your most holy and precious and divine and sacred name. I pray for traveling mercy for all those that are on the road. I pray for protection for them in the streets and in their homes. I pray that you will continue to free their minds and that they will be truly the light that shines bright. In your most holy and precious name, I say amen, ashe, amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
All right. Thank you, beautiful Black people.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
All right. Safe travels.
See you Sunday.